Hello, welcome back to my channel. I am Mercedes and this is the Frugal Life with Mercedes. So I saw a news video about how weddings are the in thing for 2025. And so I was watching the video, it was a couple of minutes long, and it was talking about how people that are getting married in 2025 are choosing to have micro weddings, which is 50 people or less, and that normally a wedding is 150 people at $250 a head, and that's typically like $40,000, which I was like, oh goodness. And they said that with 50 people, the wedding is about $14,000. Which I still think is way too much for a wedding. Mine is going to cost a fraction of that. I'm not judging. I'm just saying, I just think it's funny when they talk about frugality, and it's like, I don't think that $14,000 for a wedding is very frugal. No judgment. I always tell you guys that personal finance is that personal. And if you feel like you want to spend $50,000 on a wedding, that is your prerogative. For me, I would not be interested in that, and I've discussed that. But it did give kind of like, it said that if you have a smaller wedding, you can open up, you have more choices of venues where you would like to get married at. They also said that brides are choosing to rent their wedding dress or to buy a second-hand wedding dress. I shared before that the wedding dress I will be wearing is second-hand, but it was brand new with tags. Not that that matters, but it's just kind of like a thrift store flex. And it was actually on sale when I bought it, and I paid $9 for my wedding dress, which you guys will be seeing here in the next couple of weeks. I also have a second wedding dress that is more of like a sundress, and I want to say I paid $7 for that one too, and it was secondhand. So, you know, and then also it talked about how brides are choosing to get engagement and wedding rings that are not diamonds. Mine were moss agate and lab created diamonds. And something that was really funny about the video is they did a little clip of the movie Father of the Bride, part one, you know, when his daughter gets married. And it basically just showed Steve Martin, George Banks, when he's sitting down with, you know, with Franck and his wife and his daughter, and he's looking at a $1,200 cake, and they're telling him that that's a bargain, and he's saying, my first car didn't cost that much. And I was laughing about that, and then of course the news people were like, $1,200 is a steal for a wedding cake, and I'm sure it probably is, but I was laughing because my wedding cake cost $50. We are going with a brownie cookie, which I've talked about all this stuff before, but I personally am not a big cake person in general, but especially wedding cake, I had zero interest in having a traditional wedding cake. So my mother found a local women-owned bakery. It's a small business, and she makes cookies out of brownies, so they're brownie cookies, and 2 orders of those is like $50. So, and the lady's going to deliver them to my mother's house the morning of the wedding. But yeah, so I you know, it's just funny. I am glad that people are kind of jumping on the bandwagon that you don't have to invite every person you've ever come into contact with for your wedding. You don't have to have a traditional wedding cake. You don't have to spend thousands of dollars on a wedding dress that you're going to wear one time. And something else that's really funny, when Brandon and I got engaged, actually before we even got engaged, because I knew we were going to be getting engaged, my mom and I were talking about what kind of wedding I would want. And I told her, I said, you know, in Father of the Bride, part one, where Annie is talking about the wedding, like in the very beginning, and George like imagines them getting married like in their backyard, because she said she wants to get married at the family's house, and so he's thinking barbecue. So then you see this vision of him, like he sees this vision of them with like hamburgers and hot dogs and like an accordion player, and his daughter's in this like very simple white sundress, and he's thinking that. But of course, if you know the movie, George Banks is cheap. And I'm going to say cheap because he had an obscenely large house and an obscenely expensive old, like, classic car. But other stuff he was pretty cheap about. But anyway, so I told my mom, I said, well, in Father of the Bride Part 1, the wedding that George wants his daughter to have, the backyard barbecue, I said, that is the wedding that I want. I said, the George Banks original thought before his daughter, got all fancy, and it ended up being that big fancy wedding. And I said, with a mix of the wedding from the Wonder Years, and if any of you guys watched the Wonder Years, when the main character's sister gets married, she is like a flower child because it takes place in the 60s and 70s, and she marries her live-in boyfriend, which was very taboo at the time, and her hippie friends like do a backyard thing, and it's like really like very like of the time, and I don't even think that it was legal. They got married by some sort of spiritual leader of some kind. But anyway, I told Mom, I said, those are the two weddings that I see for mine. And so I thought that was funny. Anyway, big long story, but apparently they didn't call them frugal in the news video. They called them micro weddings. But it is nice that people are realizing that it's like the cost of weddings is just too much. Now again, if it's something that's important to you, go on with your bad self. But how much you spend on a wedding does not determine how much you love each other, how long you'll be together, how true or valid your relationship is. The point is how you feel about each other. So anyway, guys, apparently my wedding is on trend, and I did text that to my mom and sisters, and they were like, you're on trend as always. So anyway, I thought that was funny. Okay, guys, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye.